I was always the quiet one. In a group of friends built like brick shithouses, men who wrestled steel and timber for a living, I was the ghost in the machine. The one who made the machines work. They called me Keyboard, or the Ghost, and their good-natured ribbing was a constant, comforting noise in my life. A sound I understood. But there are other sounds. Sounds you can't explain. Sounds that don't belong in any machine or any forest. Sounds that follow you home and curl up in the dark corners of your mind, waiting for a night like this to be let out. We were in the Hell, a bar that smelled of stale beer and old sawdust, on one of those rare nights when all 5 of us were in the same Alaskan town. The stories had started, as they always did, with the horrors of the job. Gritty, visceral tales of industrial accidents, of blood on snow and sudden, violent ends. My friend Riggs, an oil rigger with forearms like canned hams, was just finishing his story about a blowout that sent 3 men into the freezing North Sea. They just vanished, he said, his voice a low rumble. 1 second they're there, shouting over the wind. Next second, the platform groans, there's a sound like God tearing a sheet of metal, and they're gone. Just gone. A solemn nod went around the table. Danny, a logger with a beard that housed its own ecosystem, took a long pull from his beer. At least it was quick, Danny said, setting his bottle down with a soft click. Saw a guy get taken by a snapped line. Zip. His arm was just elsewhere. He lived for 2 hours, sitting in a puddle of himself, asking me if I'd seen his wedding ring. Still on his finger. The finger that was 30 feet up in a pine. They all shared that look, the one forged in shared trauma, a club I'd never be a member of. My horrors were quiet things, server crashes at 3 a.m., data corruption, the silent, scrolling dread of a system-wide hack. Civilized fears. I felt their eyes drift to me, expecting nothing. The sheltered one. The one who worked in socks. I took a drink. The beer was bitter. My throat was tight, dry. Don't, the sensible part of my brain whispered. It's not a story for a bar. It's not a story for anyone. You'll give it air. You'll make it real again. But under their glances, amused, expectant, the cage in my mind rattled. The door, never truly locked, creaked open. I've got one. My voice sounded strange, even to me. Thin. Cracked. 4 faces turned to me, eyebrows raised. Riggs smirked. Ghost got a ghost story? I ignored him. I ignored the dryness, the warning chill in my spine. I work from home, I began, my words too fast. 30 acres outside of Fairhaven. It's a college town, tiny, nestled in the mountains. My place backs onto the woods. Hundreds of miles of tribal land and college preserve. I had their attention now. Not because the setting was scary, but because it was mine. My domain. It was a Tuesday. 1 in the afternoon. Sun was out, brutal for Alaska. I was watering my vegetable garden, right at the tree line. And I heard a voice. Danny chuckled. Bear probably. Sound weird sometimes. No, I said, too sharply. Not an animal. A human voice. But, broken. Like a corrupted MP3 file. Words stuttering, cutting in and out. Just nonsense. But intentional nonsense. Coming from maybe 300 feet into the woods. I saw their smiles fade a degree. The incongruity registered. A scary voice in the dark is one thing. A scary voice in the bright sunshine, in your own backyard, is another. It stopped after half a minute. I wrote it off. College kids messing around, maybe. I told them about the second time, weeks later on a hike. The same garbled speech, further in. The profound, sudden silence of the forest around it. My decision to investigate. I found a speaker, I said, and saw the tension leak out of Riggs' shoulders. Mounted on a tree. Had the college forestry department logo on it. I called them up. Dean said it was an old art project, students recording poems to play in the woods. They'd discontinued it. The local tribe had complained, said it was disruptive. They'd taken most of the speakers down, must have missed this one. See? Danny said, smiling. Art. Spooky art. That's what I thought, I whispered. The bar noise seemed to recede, leaving our table in a bubble of quiet. Mystery solved. I went back months later, camping. I was further in, on a trail I'd never tried. And I heard it again. A different speaker, better quality. A woman clearly reading poetry. I sat on a rock to listen. It was almost nice. I paused, seeing the memory in stark detail. The dappled sunlight. The smell of damp earth and pine. The calm. Then, I said, my voice dropping, I heard the other voice. Their glasses were frozen halfway to their lips. It was close. Maybe 50 feet. And it was, mimicking her. But it was all wrong. The cadence was inverted, the pitch wobbled in these unnatural glissandos. It was like hearing a sentence put through a woodchipper and poorly reassembled. And it was getting closer. Brushing through the undergrowth. I was back there. The cool shade of the clearing was hotter than the bar. I could feel the sweat on my neck. The forest went dead silent. Every bird, every bug. Just this thing, babbling, and the recorded poem. I was frozen. And then I saw a hand part the ferns. I looked at each of them. It was a hand. Long fingers, too many joints, pale like something that had never seen the sun. It was reaching. Not grabbing. Just reaching. And my brain broke. I ran. I didn't think. I just ran. I described the sprint, the slap of branches, the raw terror. Then, the second stop. The utter, complete silence that fell, a silence so deep it felt like pressure on my eardrums. I stopped running. My gut told me to stop. It wasn't a feeling of being watched. It was, being studied. Like a bug under a magnifying glass. The air was hot and dead. I stood there, mid-stride, refusing to even blink. I knew, if I moved, if I proved I was alive and not just part of the scenery, it would be over. What was it? Riggs breathed, his voice hushed. I don't know. But it was there. I could feel its focus on me, this immense, alien attention. My lungs were burning. I was going to pass out. And then, the focus shifted. Just a few degrees. Towards something else. And the forest came back to life. A bird chirped. A leaf rustled. It was like a spell broke. I gasped so loud I scared myself. I didn't run the rest of the way. I walked, fast, every nerve screaming, until I got home. I finished my beer. The table was silent. Their faces were pale, all traces of condescension gone, replaced by the grim understanding of men who knew real fear. I never went back for my tent, I said softly. The spell in the bar broke. There were uneasy shifts, muttered fucks, and a sudden collective interest in the bottom of glasses. The stories were over for the night. As we filed out into the crisp Alaskan night, Danny clapped a heavy hand on my shoulder. Hell of a story, Ghost. Riggs lingered as the others headed to their trucks. He put a hand on my arm, his face serious. That true? All of it? I looked up at the endless, star-punched sky. There are things out there, I said, choosing my words with care, that don't fit. Things that shouldn't be. Every now and then, someone stumbles into their territory. The lucky ones get to walk away and talk about it. He searched my face, then nodded, seemingly satisfied. Night, man. Night. He walked away, and I was alone with the lie of omission. Because I hadn't told them the worst part. I hadn't told them it had a shape. I hadn't told them about the research, the missing persons reports, or about Ilya. And I certainly hadn't told them what happened next. The bar story was a pressure valve. Letting a piece of the terror out made the rest of it, locked inside, feel more manageable. For a week, I slept through the night. I worked. I almost convinced myself it had been a hallucination born of solitude and an overactive imagination. Then the dreams started. Not nightmares of chase or dismemberment, but dreams of profound stillness. I would be standing in my backyard, watering the garden, and the world would gradually lose its sound. The chirp of the chickadees would slow, deepen, and warp into that familiar, garbled speech. The breeze would die. The sun would dim, not to darkness, but to a flat, shadowless gray. And I would stand there, unable to move, feeling that same intense, analytical focus pressing down on me from the tree line. I would wake up parched, my muscles stiff, as if I really had been standing frozen for hours. The dreams were one thing. The email was another. It arrived on a Tuesday morning, with a subject line that stopped my heart: inquiry regarding acoustic anomaly, Blackwood Preserve. The sender was Dr. Eris Thorne, Department of Ethnolinguistics, Fairhaven College. The body was polite, professional, and chilling. Mr. Klein. My colleague in forestry mentioned your call last year about a malfunctioning audio device on the Blackwood trails. I am conducting cross-disciplinary research on acoustic phenomena in isolated environments and was hoping I might ask you a few questions about your experience. Specifically, the nature of the corrupted speech you described. Any detail you can recall, pitch, rhythm, phonetic breakdown, would be invaluable. The local tribal council has shared some fascinating, albeit unscientific, lore regarding echoes that learn in that region, and I believe your first-hand account may provide a crucial data point. Sincerely, Dr. Eris Thorne. Echoes that learn. The phrase squirmed in my brain. I deleted the email. Then, immediately, I retrieved it from the trash. I stared at it for an hour. Don't, the voice in my head warned. You're feeding it. But another voice, the one that had spoken up in the bar, argued back. He might have answers. He might know what it is. Knowing is better than not knowing. I replied with 3 lines. The speech was fragmented. Syllables were repeated or missing. It sounded like a bad imitation of human speech, not a recording error. He wrote back within minutes. Fascinating. Was there ever a moment where the anomalous speech seemed to react to or incorporate elements of the primary, poetry, audio? My fingers were cold on the keys. Yes. The last time. It was mimicking the poem. Badly. Last time? He replied. There was more than one encounter? I closed the laptop. I was shaking. I'd said too much. I spent the rest of the day jumping at every creak of the house, every distant sound from the woods. I kept the curtains closed. That evening, as I was trying to lose myself in the neutral chaos of a server log, my doorbell rang. No one came out here. Ever. Delivery drivers left packages at the gate. My friends texted. Fear, cold and slick, poured down my spine. I crept to the front window, peering through a slit in the blinds. A man stood on my porch. Late 60s, lean and wiry, with a face like old leather stretched over stone. He wore faded jeans, a flannel shirt, and a heavy parka despite the mild evening. His hair was long and gray, tied back. But it was his eyes that held me, dark, piercing, and utterly weary. He didn't look like a professor. He saw me looking. He didn't smile. He just gave a single, slow nod. I knew who he was. The shaman. Ilya's grandfather. I opened the door. The cool air smelled of peat and pine. You are the one who spoke to my grandson, he said. His voice was a dry rustle, like leaves in a tomb. Yes. He should not have spoken of the Akondixiti. He used the full term, the syllables clicking softly against his teeth. He said you needed to know. About the speaker. The speaker was a foolishness. A noise in a quiet place. But it is not the noise that is the problem. It is what comes to listen. He looked past me, into the shadows of my house, then back to the dense wall of trees behind it. You saw it. The listener. The name, so simple, so apt, made my stomach clench. I saw something. You looked at it. No. I felt it look at me. A flicker of something, respect, passed through his weary eyes. That is why you are alive. You did not give it a pattern. It saw a shape, but no life. A stump. A rock. He stepped closer. It is not done. It has a taste now. A curiosity. The bad copy it made from the speaker, it is hungry for a better one. A better copy of what? Of the voice. Of the thing that makes the voice. He looked at me, and in his gaze, I saw a terrible pity. It wants to learn what a human is. From the inside out. The world seemed to tilt. The missing hiker. Last fall. The first attempt. Poor. Flawed. It was not satisfied. He looked towards the woods again, his expression grim. It will try again. It is patient. It has been here longer than the trees. But now it has a goal. It is focused. What do I do? The question was a plea. You leave. For a long time. This is my home. It is its forest, he said simply. You are a ripple in its water. It will smooth you out. He turned to go. Wait. The college professor. Thorne. He's asking questions. The old man went very still. The one who digs up bones and asks their names, he whispered. He hears the stories and thinks they are puzzles. He does not understand they are warnings. He looked back at me. Do not talk to him. Your words will be a map. For him. And for it. He walked off my porch and melted into the twilight, leaving me standing in the open doorway, the forest exhaling its cold, fragrant breath into my face. I didn't leave. I was a creature of logic, of problem solving. A threat was a variable. Variables could be understood, contained, eliminated. I armed myself. I bought a 12-gauge shotgun and spent weekends at a range, learning its brutal heft. I installed motion sensor lights around the perimeter of the cleared yard, cameras linked to my phone. I lived in a state of hypervigilance, jumping at every alert. A deer tripping the lights at 2 a.m. would send me to the window, shotgun in hand, heart hammering. I became a prisoner in my own fortress, and the fortress felt flimsier every day. A week after the shaman's visit, the cameras caught something. It was 3:17 a.m. The alert chimed on my phone, pulling me from a shallow sleep. The camera was the one pointed at the old trailhead, where my property met the preserve. The video showed nothing but a static shot of the path disappearing into blackness. I was about to dismiss it as a false trigger when I saw it. At the very edge of the infrared range, where the light gave way to pitch, something moved. Not an animal. It was too upright. It passed behind a thick spruce, and for a moment, the camera's view was clear. Then it stepped out from behind a different tree, 10 feet to the left. Impossible speed. No visible movement between points. It stood at the edge of the light, just a tall, thin silhouette. It was turned away, looking into the woods. Then, slowly, its head rotated towards the camera. There were no features, just a smooth, dark oval. It stared for 5 full seconds, and then the audio picked it up. A sound. Not the garbled speech. This was lower. A wet, clicking rasp, like 2 stones being rubbed together deep underwater. It clicked, paused, then clicked again in a different pattern. It was learning. Not just mimicking. Experimenting. The figure took a step forward, into the dimmest fringe of the light. Its arm came up. The hand was wrong. The fingers were too long, the joints too pronounced. It reached towards the camera, not to touch it, but as if tracing its shape in the air. The feed died. Not a disconnection. The timestamp froze. When I checked the physical unit the next morning, it was intact, but the microSD card was corrupted. Utterly unreadable. It had learned about the camera and neutralized it. That was the day I realized the shaman was right. This wasn't a predator guarding its territory. This was a scientist. A horribly curious, inhuman scientist. And I was its specimen. Dr. Eris Thorne was persistent. When I didn't respond to further emails, he called. When I didn't answer, he left a voicemail, his voice tinged with academic excitement. Mr. Klein, Eris Thorne again. I understand your hesitation, truly. But this is important. I've collated your data with tribal reports and some fascinating audio artifacts my team has gathered. There's a pattern here. A linguistic decay curve that's utterly unique. It suggests a non-human intelligence attempting phonological assimilation. We could be on the verge of something monumental. Artifacts. His team was gathering artifacts. My blood ran cold. They were poking the hornet's nest with recording equipment. I finally called him back. He answered on the first ring. Mr. Klein. Thank you for... You need to stop, I interrupted, my voice flat. Stop going into the Blackwood Preserve. Stop recording. A pause. I assure you, our protocols are perfectly safe. We're discreet.